Now that we've had a couple of days to absorb Trump's indictment, it's time we look back and start putting this all together. I don't know about you, but I'm a Seventh day Sabbath keeper, and not in the religious sense to where you go to church for an hour to be entertained by someone. The Sabbath is kind of a day to get together with God, and a lot of times God is going to go over the details of the week to put everything in a proper perspective, point out details that I didn't see, and man, did He do that to me this morning. I tell you, God laid out this week like I must have missed like 90% of it. Anyway, we're gonna dive right into it and take a look at what happened this week. Uh, One of the things is kind of entitling this one. Uh, this isn't this isn't even a fair fight. For one thing, we've got the left that basically looks at us conservative Christians and they think they got us all figured out. But they really don't. Their big mistake, their first mistake, is they look at all of us as one group, individuals, a flock of sheep that they can easily outwit, outmaneuver, outthink. But we're really a collection of a whole bunch of different people with different opinions. We get together, we share our different opinions, we share on social media like you wouldn't believe. I mean, look at all the YouTube channels with all the perspectives from different views. We watch people with different views and we collect all this information from different people. And isn't that exactly what Trump did when he was president? He had a problem. He'd call in experts from all over the country. Experts in different fields. He'd bring them to the White House. He'd sit them all down. They'd exchange all these ideas, and then Trump and his staff would come up with a solution based on the input from 20, 30, maybe 100 different perspectives. And that really helps to work out the details of a plan that stands a pretty good chance of succeeding. Well, Democrats don't do that. If we take a look at what we got on the Democrat side, we've got Biden, and he's the weakest leader we've ever seen in our generation as a president. The guy is weak. Someone's telling him what to do. I mean, here's the thing. They look at us as one group and they think we're all exactly the same, but what patriots do is they look at people as individuals. Biden, weak. He portrays a weakness that we've never seen in this country before. Let's go down the line. Harris. I don't need to explain Harris's personality. I mean, I could cackle like her and everybody would know exactly, what I'm thinking. But we can see exactly why they chose her as vice president. She's easily manipulated. She doesn't have any opinions of her own, and whenever she opens her mouth, she sounds like a 5-year-old talking. Okay, let's take a look at the next one in line, Hakeem Jeffries. Well, we take a look at him. He exhibits the personality that clearly portrays he is a man that's told what to say, and he's going to do exactly what he's told. He's been groomed by Pelosi, and the guy couldn't have an original thought to save his life. Now we're going to take a look at some of the staff, Biden's staff of advisors. These are the people that are supposed to be giving the president advice. And we know he's not getting any advice from any of his advisors. As a matter of fact, Biden has the biggest, the largest number of advisors in the White House in history. He's made up all kinds of new roles and stuff for people to, just give them a job. And these people got the easiest job in the world because we can see, and we see right through it, that everything is scripted for them, and they don't have to think. And they're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and who knows how much they're making on the side out of that $20 trillion that the Democrats took control of between 2021 and 2022. What happened to that $20 trillion? Well, we can all speculate on the cut that each one of them got. What do we got? We got the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. Has anybody heard from him? Has he contributed one original idea? No. Well, we got a Secretary of Defense, retired General Lloyd Austin. Has anybody heard anything from him? Well, yeah, he shot down a couple of balloons. But has anybody heard of him before Biden found him? No. Then we got Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas. I mean, we've seen him in the Senate hearings. Not the Senate hearings, House of Representative hearings. I mean, this guy can't answer a straight question to save his life. He wants to keep on bragging about what he's done, and he hasn't done anything. But every time he's asked a question, he wants to go back to what he thinks he accomplished, and every time he opens up his mouth, he just proves he hasn't accomplished a thing. Okay, we got the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen. Well, obviously she sums up exactly what Biden's staff is. She can't answer a question to save her life. She tries to impress people with her knowledge, but she never ever mentions a single step that's going to straighten out the problems we're having with inflation, the economic situation, creating jobs, or anything. She can't come up with an original idea to save herself, and that sums up the entire Biden staff. As a matter of fact, if I looked up the Biden staff on the internet and went through it, and guess what? I've never even heard of the vast majority, 80% of the people on Biden's staff I've never heard of, and we haven't heard a single thing from any of them. Okay, we got Attorney General Merrick Garland. Okay, that's the guy that's supposed to be overseeing the justice system in the entire United States. Well, okay, we see that he's nothing more than a pawn for Soros. I mean, Biden never points out what he's doing good or what he's doing bad. Biden's in his own world, and Garland is just taking orders from, the globalist. And we know what he's doing. Okay, Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Obviously, Joe's got to learn to pronounce some of these names. As a matter of fact, I have trouble. Buttigieg. But what has Pete accomplished? He was a failure as a mayor in some little South Bend, Indiana. And Democratic Party, because he's a failure as a mayor, oh yeah, well, we may as well run him for president. Yeah, right. That really worked out really good. Okay, anyway, we've seen Pete, and he's another shining example. They had that chemical spill in East Palestine, Ohio, and Pete, who we know as Mr. Vacation, oh yeah, I was pregnant and it was so tough, and I just had to go on vacation and take some time off. I mean, come on, Pete. We know you weren't pregnant. We're not stupid. And that's exactly, Pete demonstrates exactly how the left views us. They look at us like we're stupid idiots. All of the followers on the left, Democrats, the only followers they got are people with absolutely zero brains. And they think we're exactly like that, but we just have a different view. Okay, Pete, time to get to work. Oh, that's right. You don't know anything about transportation. Okay, we got Director, Domestic Policy Council. Who's that? Barack Obama. I mean, Susan Rice. Okay, two of the same thing. Freudian slip. Anyway, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. George Soros. I mean, John Kerry. Okay? Oh, man, that guy comes up with the stupidest ideas. I mean, this guy is like living in Fantasy Island or something, or whatever he's smoking. I wish he'd share it with the rest of us. And then, last but not least, we got Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Okay, I love the way Tucker Carlson pronounces her name. I mean, it cracks me up every time he does this story on her. But she couldn't argue her way out of a paper bag. Matter of fact, oh man, wouldn't you love to see a conversation between Karine Jean-Pierre and Kamala Harris? I mean, that would be, man, we'd be rolling over laughing. Oh man, if they did that, we'd probably lose 10% of Patriots. Laugh themselves to death. Okay, one of the things that doesn't make this a fair fight is looking at the physical aspects right away. Okay, we're going to take what happened this past week as an example. Okay, we had the unfortunate shooting in Nashville. Still praying for families. Losing 3 children and 3 adults in that shooting. I mean, it was a tragedy. But did anyone on Biden's staff acknowledge the fact that children lost their lives and there's an entire town is in shock? No. Did Biden do it? No, he came out making jokes and goes right into his, we got to ban all the guns again. Okay, got to ban assault weapons. It's the assault weapons' fault. Well, the fact of the matter is that those 2 assault weapons and that pistol were carried into a school by a member of the LGBTQ community who targeted Christians because they did not agree with what that individual thought. I'm not saying the entire gay community thinks that way. The radicals probably all agree with her. As a matter of fact, we heard radicals going on TikTok and everything else supporting the shooter. I mean, that is sick. It's disgraceful. But did anybody on Biden's staff point that tragedy out? No. Some of them even got on there and supported the... Okay, I almost said a word I shouldn't say on YouTube. The weirdos on TikTok. Okay, so what happened after that school shooting? The first thing is the media, all the Democrats and the TikTok community all got on and they're all crying that the LGBTQ community is living in fear, blah, 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 the whole bit. Anything happen? No. But they had to get their message out. They knew nothing was going to happen. Okay, all these peace-loving Christians that believe in Jesus and forgiveness, and some of them are working their tails off to reach these idiots, is going to suddenly turn into, I don't even want to get into it. But, that's exactly what the media and everything, whoever's writing this script That's exactly what they wanted to do. There's a shooting and that big cry of, we're in fear of revenge or vengeance or whatever. Well, should learn a little thing about Christians. We leave that kind of stuff up to the Lord. We don't dabble in the Lord's work, and we don't go out and do things unless, of course, we're directed from God. Okay, right after they go through this big fear-mongering thing that they were scripted to do, they went into the big gun control led by Biden, and suddenly, on the same day, you see the whole idiots from the Democratic Party, their little armies going into state assemblies all over the United States. Not all over, but there must have been between 12 and 20 state assemblies they went into, and they started holding protests inside state capitals calling for gun control. All of them at the same time. Well, does this just happen by chance? No, this is all scripted. We're not stupid. We can see it's scripted. Quit treating us like idiots. God gave us a brain and we're all using it because for the most part it's pretty much drug free, which is another advantage we got, and another point that proves this isn't even a fair fight. Okay, so after they go through with this big gun control thing, what do? They indict Trump. And that's after they said they're going to take a month off. Oh, next day, boy, we really fooled them. Man, we caught these Trump supporters off guard. We knew it was coming. Come on, you're not dealing with idiots. You got to learn that, come on, think. So they indict Trump. Of course, we got the left who jumps on all kinds of strange little stories and those TV shows they have on with a bunch of crazy women spouting off the stupidest things that ever heard on the earth. I'm not going to mention any names here. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, they're all trying to give a big whoopee about Trump being indicted, and they go off with their. The first thing they did is they claimed there were going to be riots and all this stuff all over the place. You know what? We saw this coming way before you even tried springing this on us. It's another January 6th setup. We all know it. We're all sitting, waiting to see what stupid ideas you're going to come up with next. We know. Let me fill you in on something. All of Trump's supporters know Donald Trump is a big boy. He's able to take care of himself. And you know what? He's probably going to come up with a better plan than most of us could think of. And we'd rather see what President Trump is going to do to defend himself. That's the first step. Wait and see. You know what, though? The left and the Democrats look at that as a weakness. Oh, they're not doing anything. And they're trying to figure out, well, how come they didn't go out and start a revolution? We know we're trying to be baited into a revolution. That's why we're not doing anything. You failed. You failed again. This isn't even a fair fight. You Democrats are so stupid. It's that's why this country is falling apart. It's being led by a bunch of idiots that can't think past 2 or 3 steps. So we got into all of that. And what did we learn from it? Well, number one, we learned Democrats cannot plan past 2 or 3 details at a time. They don't have the brain capacity. Well, what do we know? We know that they fear Trump. Why do they fear Trump? Because Trump is a negotiator. As a matter of fact, Trump is a master negotiator. Trump has been negotiating his entire life. Trump learned to negotiate from his father. Trump learned to negotiate with the best. Trump took all these best attributes of negotiating from hundreds of people, put it all together, and that scares the bejeebers out of the Democrats that don't have those skills. Trump plans ahead. Trump, we know, is like 100 steps ahead of the whole Democrat Party leaders, Biden's entire staff of, what has he got? How many? I didn't count up how many staff members he has that are supposed to be advising him, but you put them all together, we'll send our gladiator into the arena with them, and we're going to watch Trump smear you. I mean, that goes without saying. The biggest problem that the Democrats have is they look at conservatives as being weak because we're religious. As a matter of fact, I kind of covered this in my last video where I posted about the school board. And they had the 6 members of the school board that were going up against my wife, and man, I just sat back and I watched her just completely annihilate them on whatever subject they came up. I mean, they tried dozens of different ways to justify themselves, and my wife had absolutely no problem just trampling them into the ground. Verbally. Okay. And then it got to the point that I stepped in, asked a simple question. Did any of you ever read the Bible? None of them ever did. They're trying to parlay with my wife on the Bible, and they made the mistake of trying to parlay with me in the Bible. But that sums up the Democrats' brain capacity. They convince themselves that they can debate a book they never read. And they've convinced themselves they can use the same propaganda and mind control they use on the people that follow them on patriots, conservatives, and, us Christians. You just can't. That's a problem with Democrats. That's their main problem. And the reason this is not a fair fight is the Democrats cannot see God. None of them. Not a single one of them. And if there are Democrats that can see God, but the ones that are in charge don't want to hear anything about God. They don't want to hear anything. And you know what? You know how stupid these Democrats are? Their real leader is George Soros. Let me tell you a little bit about George Soros. He was working for the Nazis. You know what he did for the Nazis? He stole from the Jews. So their big leader, and you can watch these videotapes on George Soros at his meetings in the WEF. He's got like 5,000 people that are, leaders of industry hanging on his every word. They are hanging on the word of a thief and a murderer. That's how stupid these people are. I mean, you might as well put the devil up in front of them. They wouldn't notice the difference. That's why this is not a fair fight at all. Let me tell you a little bit about God and his fair fight and the way us Christians know. Well, for one thing, we already know the war is won, but we're not afraid of the battles. You know why? Because just like I told you this morning, you wake up, you start praying, God lays everything out in front of us, every single Christian. We all listen on different levels, but the fact of the matter is, There's a lot of us that are listening on levels you could not imagine. Matter of fact, when we look at those 2 or 3 steps that you Democrats are capable of comprehending, we can look at those 2 or 3 steps, and a lot of times we know exactly what your next step is going to be. Sometimes because we can figure it out on our own because your plans are so shallow and obvious, but we have this little thing called the Holy Spirit that is more than capable of filling us in on your next step. You know what? Donald Trump is 100 steps ahead of all you. God is infinitely ahead of every single one of your steps. Even if you were able to plan 1,000,000 steps, but we don't have an eternity for you to even plan out your 100 steps. It doesn't matter. God sees them all even before that thought enters your head. You know what? God sees the beginning from the end. Democrats cannot comprehend it. Christians, on the other hand, realize that, and we're putting our trust in God. That's why we're not going to fall into your little traps. That's why we're not going to be manipulated by you like you manipulate your followers. And, another thing is we know for a fact a lot of your followers are drug addicts. Their minds are gone. We see how you're manipulating people on over-the-counter subscription. Not over-the-counter, but prescription drugs. You've been manipulating them for a long time. That's why you had to go through and give them drug companies, what is it, $1.2 trillion for those fake vaccines, because those drug companies lost $500 billion because they were pushing the opioids for all those years. And you poisoned all those people. I mean, that is really sick. You're siding with the drug companies and they lost $500 billion. So what do? You give them twice that amount plus a little tip of 20% because you're such good people. I mean, that's just totally sick. But we see it happening. I mean, we read the news. We put 2 and 2 together. Anyway, that's why you got that open border. We see that too. You're bringing in tons of drugs, fentanyl, and creating all these designer drugs. You got people that are working on the next virus, man-made virus, and you got other people working on all these designer drugs to manipulate the mind. You see this happening. You're not fooling any of us. Matter of fact, you should be ashamed of yourself. Matter of fact, we can't wait until we get an attorney general in there under Trump that is going to eventually start putting a lot of you on trial. You open the door by indicting Trump. You got no idea the Pandora's box that you opened up. I'm not even going to go into the details, but you know what? That's going to make our job even more important by closing up and putting restrictions on using the judicial system that's originally designed to protect the people as being used for a weapon. We got to stop weaponizing the judicial system and get back to the original concept of that judicial system. That's our goal as conservatives. That's our goal as Trump supporters. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to accomplish it. And we're going to hear more whining and crying and everything else from the left. Well, we don't really care. As a matter of fact, we know that once we stop paying attention to your little less than 1%, you're just going to go away. You know, you're getting a publicity now, getting all these people feeling like they're really important because, you know, they got a bunch of views on YouTube or TikTok. That's going to go away. Nobody's going to pay any attention to you. We're going to have important things to look at, like accomplishments. We're all going to be back to work. We're going to see inflation going down. We're going to see gas prices down below $2 a gallon. And there ain't nothing you can do about it. So, the moral of the story is, this isn't even a fair fight. We got God on our side. If God wants to reveal your next step, He will. And there's plenty of us that are listening. If God wants to expose your next 10 steps, we're going to be listening. And what do you got to listen to? George Soros? You guys are going to follow a thief and a murderer? Okay, there's a little story in the Bible to where Jesus says the devil is nothing but a thief and a murderer. And if that's the direction you want to go, guess what? You live in America. You got that choice. We can respect that choice. All we ask in return is that you respect our choice.